the roles available other than the audit, basically because everybody doesn't really get the audit right, so they need to look after other roles as well. And what's the level of hiring here in UK in terms of what type of roles. So this video is just a brief about, of course, I'm an audit side, so I don't have that much insights on consulting or other areas, but a bit of that. So I'll be talking about just looking ahead, I guess, broad service lines being in all big four, and even I guess other than big four, the broader is the biggest one, which we basically get job in is audit and assurance usually, and then there are of course consulting advisory, which includes the financial advisory, and then risk advisory. There are strategy and transactions, which deal with transaction consulting, and then there's a deals advisory, deals with kind of mergers and acquisitions and many other stuff. Let's say debt advisory, etc. So these are the broad service lines. Of course, audit assurance is something we as an auditor, we as a person having experience of 4 years or 5 years, more or less come in this field. Just going a bit deep into that, traditional audit roles are more or less what we basically work over there. It's like the public audit, which is basically the listed clients, private audits, like small clients, those the private equities, venture capitals, or other private groups, basically. And then financial services is basically a big umbrella. And then there are, of course, the banking inside that, which is kind of a big role. And in the banking, there's a but it's not exactly linked to banking, but then there's a client assets role, kind of a safeguarding one, and then insurance asset management. So these are the more or less financial services. So altogether, all these roles together make kind of traditional roles, which we even have over there as well in our country. Basically, the auditing roles in terms of external audit. Now, going a bit into depth is basically the specialized roles now. Specialized roles are not something we are really able to get into directly because our prior experience is more or less based on the pure auditing of the financial statements and not in any area. Let's say I listed out a few of them. There are more than that, right? Let's say pensions. We might work on a little bit of pension. Okay, we saw the disclosures. As per the IFRS, we saw their workings. We saw that, but how does the things work in background? We don't know that. There's independent actuary or anything else. So this is again, there are specialist departments. It's quite few firms or specialist teams which look after that. So this is the pension. Then there are financial instruments, treasury. Again, one of the critical areas being IFRS 9, IFRS 7, 13, I-39, etc., etc. So this is again a critical kind of area. There are departments for credit risk. There's, I know in Deloitte there's a credit risk center of excellence as well. So you kind of there are different type of departments which are kind of building a specialist skill set at a firm, to grow in that space. And then there is analytics and modeling, which is kind of a hot, I guess, the latest kind of a department, which is growing really high. Basically, the demand of analytics and modeling and everything, each aspect of the job. So that's the one. Accounting advisory has been really critical in terms of assessing the accounting treatments. So, and regulatory assurance, market assurance, actuarial. So there are quite a few roles. But again, going into these is a bit difficult for a starter. Let's say you worked 4 years in external auditing in the bank. That's in a banking audit. You might not be really able to get into these roles directly. Let's say at max, I think if you got exposure of ECL modeling, then you might be able to progress through in credit risk. Let's say you had a broad exposure to that. But yeah, again, it's not like generic, okay, you have done the banks, you can't be in these. You might be, just need the relevant skill set if you got that through that job. Or let's say analytics and modeling, if you did this aspect of these things basically in your job, then you might be able to get into these. But again, these roles are kind of having grown importance over the years, and definitely firms are kind of building a specialist set of skills to manage the clients and build the knowledge base. Going ahead now, this is basically where it gets bit uh, difficult. Not let's say not difficult, but just a bit different, right? So the other questions I got asked was, everybody doesn't really get the audit role. So somebody goes into risk advisory, somebody goes into, let's say, consulting. Even in Pakistan as well, every firm has got advisory departments. Now, what's scope for them? Because the maximum hiring we see is more or less within audit, as all of us, which are auditors, just come through the external audit route more or less. Having a look through a different structure and knowing a few people who come over the years, there are a lot of different jobs in those departments. Now, I guess, as I mentioned earlier, there are a couple of departments being financial advisory, risk advisory, consulting, and then deals advisory and transactions. So each of the department has many underlying sub-service lines, basically. I have just put a few of them here, which are quite famous, and I have seen people over these as well. Of course, there are a lot more than that. So I guess one of the important ones are transaction consulting and merger and acquisition. So there's a a lot of activity going on in terms of M&As or transactions, and then there is advisory on that, or the consulting on that, which has been growing. But again, this is not like an auditor can directly come in without a prior experience. So this is where a risk advisory guy, if they have worked for similar transactions, similar experience, you can get in. If you've got relevant experience, then meet the job descriptions basically. Uh, there are other jobs like the debt advisory, or the capital advisory or capital markets advisory, etc. So these type of jobs are there. If in your home country you got exposure to these type of things, you might be eligible for that. But again, their job descriptions are quite, uh, let's say, specific. They expect you to be having some attributes in your past job to even apply for that. So just watch out for that. There's this huge demand of cloud-based jobs recently. It's a growing trend. Everything is moving to cloud. There are jobs in that, and that's from probably the IT perspective, or anybody who's system engineer, I guess. But again, this is not really for auditors. Then there is a technology consulting, cloud-based, data-based, like big data, ERP, cybersecurity, everything is there. And as part of consulting, if you got exposure to these things, you can easily search different firms' career pages to see there are relevant jobs over there. There's forensics, and then the last one is quite important: the internal audit controls. I know there's a proper setups in firms on internal auditing, which is very much relevant here as well, especially with coming of like the and for possible coming of UK SOC sometime in future. This is very much important, and there's quite a lot of hiring over there in these areas. All in all, I guess there is little less jobs available in these areas, as I've seen over the years, because I have seen a lot of audit-based jobs and audit-based people coming to the country in the firms. But nevertheless, if you got relevant skill set, relevant the experience, you are able to apply, and that probably is the job as well. Well, just FYI, I guess these roles tend to be more interesting than the normal auditing job, because and these roles are more or less more challenging as against normal audit, because of the level of activity involved, the urgency of the companies who are looking for your services. And then in turn, these roles tend to be a bit more rewarding as well. So definitely, if you got some good exposure in these areas, you must apply for that. The last thing I would say is there is a bit of less of a quantum in terms of these jobs. I think the last thing to say is basically, I guess, there have been people coming in these type of jobs from our country, from firms as well as from industry as well. So it just depends on the level of exposure you have and the skill set you got over there. So it's definitely worth exploring if you got the relevant experience, and then if there's any relevant role you might want to apply. Or again, as I mentioned in my earlier email, LinkedIn is a great source to research the job. You might want to take advantage of that, just in terms of searching the job, and recruiters as well. I don't have a lot on this video. Basically, just wanted to give a brief highlight of what's the uh, categories or the service lines available for you to apply the job. If you got any specific questions, I might not be having all the answers, but I can try to answer as much as possible.